hope for millions of people in increasing prosperity on the basis of trade and exchange is in your hands. The outcome of this meeting can positively touch on many other pressing challenges, such as insecurity, instability, and inequality. It is therefore my earnest encouragement to all negotiating teams represented here today to seize this particular moment.
The World Trade Organization has come to Kenya. It is the first time the global body has held a conference in Africa, and global finance and business experts have convened to discuss a range of issues, including agricultural subsidies, an environmental goods agreement, and the expansion of a $1.3 trillion information technology deal. This week, we'll bring you some highlights from the WTO's 10th Ministerial Conference in Nairobi. I'm Peninah Karibe. Welcome to Talk Africa. As the 10th Ministerial Conference kicked off in Kenya's capital Nairobi this week, Liberia became the latest country to join the World Trade Organization. The new position is expected to support economic reform and sustainable development in Liberia, currently listed among the world's least developed economies. I sat down with Liberian President Ellen Johnson Sirleaf to find out what the membership status means for the West African nation and how it could boost the Liberian economy. Madam President, Liberia officially becomes a member of the World Trade Organization at this 10th ministerial meeting. Is your government convinced that you got a fair treatment during the negotiation process?
We're very convinced that we had fair treatment. Although we've been working on this for 7 years, trying to meet the various requirements, make sure we had all the appropriate laws and policies in place, we think it was record time in the last 2 years when our efforts were accelerated, and we pushed very hard because we wanted to make sure that we did get in this momentous year when you have so many other international fora that are stressing on moving things along for the empowerment of women, the empowerment of people. And so, yeah, we feel that we did it in time, and we feel that we got the results we wanted.
Liberia is just rebounding from the adverse effects of Ebola. What will this membership mean to your country?
This means that I hope we'll be able to get, after the closure of the Doha round, we'll get some technical assistance. We'll be able to help support our small and medium-sized businesses. We've just passed a couple of new laws to support them. And we hope that we'll be able to network with some of the other countries that have advanced, particularly in the area of technology. And most of our focus of having joined the WTO is to focus on empowering those who are at the lower scale, those who are beginning to move into the industrial sector through packaging of food, through being able to get into services that they've not been able to compete in before. And we believe that with the policies we've put in place and the support that the government is given, the extra support from the WTO arrangement will enable us to achieve some of those goals.
The IMF is projecting the global economy to slow down even further in the coming year, and commodities such as iron ore and minerals are key to your country's economic revival. What alternatives are you looking at amidst these low prices?
How well we feel the effect of the decline in global prices, because our two major commodities have been hard hit, iron ore and rubber. This is exactly why most of our diversification goals now center on agriculture. And in agriculture, there are women in agriculture moving up the supply chain and the processing chain to packaging is where we believe the emphasis has to be placed. Services, as I said, involving technology improvement are the areas that we're going to aim at diversification. We believe that we can move very rapidly in the supply chain using agriculture as the base.
Let's talk about the more than $3 billion that was made in pledges to the countries worst affected by Ebola to support the revival of their economies. Out of that amount, how much has been delivered to Liberia and what impact has it had on the economy?
Well, as you know, the resources that are pledged through the international agencies don't necessarily come directly to Liberia. What we did feel was the impact of fighting the disease, the support we got in technical assistance, in medical supplies, in the introduction of some new methods to fight Ebola. For example, we now have, we're going to have some vaccination for that. So those things coming through, we can say that we benefited from that. But to tell you precisely out of this $3 billion, how much Liberia got directly, that's very difficult because getting accountability for these kinds of international funding leave much to be desired.
But let's talk about Liberia's efforts to get back on its feet. And enterprise has been identified as one of the ways to fast-track economic development. What policies is your government pursuing to show up this sector?
As I said, what we're trying to do in the trade sector, for example,
right,
is to improve infrastructure, to improve access to finance, to improve technology. Those are the areas that we believe will enable us to perform better, to make us more competitive, to enable us to really be able to access international markets, something that we've long desired and not been able to achieve except in a very small way.
So we're having this conversation during the WTO's 10th ministerial meeting. There's a particular emphasis on propping up women in business. How would you rate your government's performance in this sector?
I would say that we have much to do. Let's put it that way. Our effort, we've supported women all throughout this administration, particularly the education of women, the empowerment of women by involving them in trade, in marketing, in access to education. All of those things we've done. But now we need the scaling up. We still have women at the lower level, of the production system, the lower level of the supply chain. And the recent policies we've made, the Land Rights Act, the availability of finance coming through the support of the government, will we think be able to move them to a place where we can say that, yes, we're moving up to be one of the highest, having empowered our women. So we still have some ways to go.
Indeed. And finally, what is the outlook for Liberia's economy in 2016 and what will be your priority areas?
2016 will be a recovery period. We have in the past seen our GDP, for example, go to as high as 9.5% and then begin to decline as a result of declining prices. The recovery has started. We expect that we'll rise up to about 3% in 2015, not far enough to be able to address poverty, but with that recovery and with the additional effort now on diversification, bringing into production some of the areas in agriculture that require much more attention and more support, we hope that we can get back on the trajectory that will take us back to where we were pre-Ebola, where at that point we had somewhere between 5 and 9 to 9 and 5%. Like I said, we hope we'll get back on that. But 2016 is just going to be recovery. We'll have to keep working at it so that by the time we get to 2020, we hope we'll have full recovery.
Madam President, thank you for speaking to us. We're going to take a short break, but when we come back, we'll have more highlights from the World Trade Organization Ministerial Conference. Stay with us. Welcome back to Talk Africa. A recent study has shown that countries that provide more economic opportunity for women, including entrepreneurship, are more competitive in the global economy. This is why a large focus of this year's World Trade Organization Ministerial Conference in Nairobi has been on the role of women in business. I sat down with a panel of experts at the conference to find out more about this, and here are some highlights from that discussion. A very warm welcome to all of you. And I want to start with you, Honorable Minister Joshua from Lesotho, and I want to know if there are specific programs in Lesotho that exist that promote women entrepreneurship.
If you look at the structure of our economy today, about 60% of our manufacturing sector is apparel sector. And the apparel sector is, I would say, about 85% women in the industry. And one of the things that we've been trying to do over the years is to localize the industry. For it to be sustainable, it has to be localized. So we realize that the only way we can do that is to then have specific interventions that would positively discriminate in favor of those that are already in the industry, and in this case, being women. So we have now started work on addressing one of the key challenges of any entrepreneur, and that is access to finance. But it's not a matter of just throwing checks. You have to have a very robust pre-disbursement framework that ensures that the business proposals are structured properly, that everything is done in accordance with best practice, for example. Then the disbursement starts. But then the other critical part is the post-disbursement support, because then you have to provide continuous support for those businesses, whether it's in the actual manufacturing of clothing or all the other related activities, packaging, logistics, financing, all those at the end of the day have to be structured properly. So the intervention that we're doing is to make sure that we set up that framework, then the check comes in, and then we can have more sustainable businesses, and that's what we're doing in an industry that is 85% predominantly women, and the entrepreneurs we're helping today are only women. It's not written or legislated that it has to be only women, but it's the way the industry has evolved. So it makes it easy for us to reach out.
Right. Ali, coming to you, one of the things I think I love about Leap Holdings is the goal that you've set for yourselves, impacting 1 million lives, creating 1 million jobs in a sustainable manner. But I want to ask, because you've invested in just about everything, in agribusiness, in manufacturing, in retail, really, is there anything Leap can do? But really, the question is, how easy is it to do intercontinent trading? Have we created that environment, the conducive environment that enables startups and encourages startups to succeed?
So I operate in two sectors that are should be very easy for us to trade on the continent. One of them being agriculture. And the type of barriers that we're seeing is access to infrastructure. If you're wanting to transport fresh produce across this continent, so I come from Namibia, where we're very fortunate to have access to great infrastructure. Unfortunately, that's not what you see across the continent. So I would like to just take intertrade across the continent as the first example. So if I were to transport my goods from Namibia into Zambia, firstly, I need to get to a border that is open at the same time as my border is open. I need to have my goods cleared in time so that by the time they get to my market, they have not gone bad. So in terms of agriculture, it's very, very difficult to trade across borders. So what we've done at the moment is we've limited ourselves to just the Namibian market. And the way that we're looking at entering other markets on the continent is actually by dehydrating. So we're now investing in solar dehydration on the farm to just be able to get long-shelved products that, without the access to infrastructure, we are able to trade across Namibia. In terms of garments, we've got things that you would think it's a sector that can employ a lot of people. So you can put a person to work fairly quickly. We train a person, within 6 weeks, they're in the production line and are making garments. So what I'm wearing is one of our branded garments. But you get across territories where it's not a tariff that stops you from trading. It is the non-tariff barriers where you would have a country that puts a ban on import of textile-related products. We test our fabrics in South Africa, to just get our fabric that we might have bought in South Africa back into South Africa for testing is a mission, because they're trying to protect their own industry in textiles. We wanted to enter into the Nigerian market. There was a ban that was lifted in 2012. That ban is now back, indirectly though, it's now back because there's a restriction in terms of what those businesses can buy in terms of products. And one of the products that's now been categorized by the Reserve Bank is garments and textiles. So it's the non-tariff barriers that makes it difficult in the industries that I operate to trade.
Dr. Richard, listening to Ali, it just brings my mind back to the East African community, because 2 years ago, we implemented the EAC protocol that was obviously supposed to bring down these barriers. But we are seeing, when you speak to traders right across the borders here in the East African community, a lot of them are saying these barriers haven't yet come down, and it makes it especially difficult for women entrepreneurs to carry on with trade. So how do we effectively then bring them down?
Well, the barriers, at least for East Africa, have come down substantively. The non-tariff barriers to trade. I mean, I was a few months ago in Uganda. When I used to go to Uganda, I would be faced with a list of hundreds of issues. Now, those issues have come down to 10, 20, 30. Progress, not enough, but progress all the same. You've heard about it. Since we instituted the single customs territory, barriers to the free movement of goods have come down substantially. Trucks are moving. It used to take 21 days to Kigali from Mombasa, now about 4, 5, 6 days. It's come down from 18 days from Dar es Salaam to Kigali to about 2 to 4 days. And we'll bring others down. The East African Legislative Assembly has just passed an East African non-tariff barriers bill. And in this bill, governments have committed to be legally bound to remove those non-tariff barriers and punish those who impose them, but they've also opened themselves up to litigation if they do impose non-tariff barriers. So a lot of work still to be done, but I think we're on the right track. Now, when I talk to male business people, since this is a focus on women, I thought I should talk about men. When I talk to male business people, they tell me that their issues are lack of capacity to export, lack of knowledge about markets, lack of access to finance, lack of facilitation. That's what they tell me. When I talk to women business people, that's exactly the same list they give me, with the added proviso that even the little that is available is only available to their male counterparts. So the women face a double burden, so to speak. Which is why in East Africa we have created the East African Business in Women platform to work with our women to access markets and bring down these barriers. We are working with the African Development Bank to set up a facility to complement what is happening at the national level for women, especially those involved in exports. We have a program for simplifying trade across borders. They have a simplified trade regime with simplified rules of origin for those people trading under $4,000, the majority of whom are women, and they can get these at the borders. What we are trying to do now is sensitize the women groups, but also the customs and other officials to understand these regimes, and we are trying to translate them into the languages that women can understand. So I am happy with what is happening, but I'm also extremely aware that we have a very, very long way to go.
We do indeed. Susan, let me rope you in here, because of course when you speak to a lot of women entrepreneurs, they do talk about lack of access to markets, especially for new businesses. Accessing markets is quite a problem. So how then do women entrepreneurs take advantage of innovations and just new business models to break through that ceiling?
Sure. Well, first of all, thank you for having us here, for hosting us today. Very delighted to be here. before I get into that, I'd just like to answer a question that I'm asked a lot,
Yes.
which is, why Coca-Cola? Why is Coca-Cola interested in women's economic empowerment? And then what is it that Coca-Cola brings to the table uniquely? And I think, why we're interested, I think is been repeated often today, which is that women are critical to anyone who's particularly in the retail business today. No business can succeed if we're not being successful with women. For Coca-Cola, the backbone of our business are these small, independent, mom and pops. We call them different things. Here we call them dukas. In South Africa, we call them spazas. And in many of the countries that I oversee in the developing markets, those small outlets are run by women. In Ghana, for example, up to 85% of them are run by women. But probably the most important reason is because, this has been oft repeated, that when you empower women, you empower communities. Women invest 90% or more of what they earn back into communities and strengthen communities. We have a business that is built on the back of communities. Coca-Cola is, it's not a product that you need, it's a product that you want. If you're in a community that isn't flourishing, our business doesn't flourish. Our Women's Economic Empowerment Program is called the 5x20 program. And it's our commitment, Coca-Cola's commitment, to empower 5 million women by the year 2020. As I said, women entrepreneurs are already a key component, thank you. Women entrepreneurs are already very key in our value chain, but we think that we can do more. We think that we can do this better. And we know that women entrepreneurs, I think one of my counterparts here just said, face barriers that men don't face. And so 5x20 is really about addressing some of those barriers. Access to finance is a key barrier that women face. And so we've leveraged our convening power. We have a partnership with the IFC to create loans that are favorable to women within our value chain. We also provide startup capital in the form of infrastructure, in the form of product that we provide to women entrepreneurs. Access to business skills training, women, literacy and numeracy. Women tend to struggle, more because of the opportunities that they've had or the lack thereof in terms of their education. And so we're looking to close that gap. So we work with partners like Mercy Corps, typically NGO partners, Mercy Corps, TechnoServe, to provide access to business skills training, which we support. We do that for our retailers. We also do it for women who are interested in becoming our retailers. And the third element is we work with, again, NGOs to help provide access to markets. There are many NGOs that are working in the agriculture sector looking for markets for their product. And so one of the projects that we worked on, called Project Nurture, we worked with the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation to help train farmers, small-scale farmers, to improve the quality of their crop and the yield of their crop so that they could actually become part of the Coca-Cola value chain at the global level. We were able to increase their yield by about 140%, and we've been taking in, on average, 36,000 tons of mango pulp, for example, and bringing that into our value chain. So these are just some examples of what we're looking to do, what we are doing with 5x20. I'm pleased to say that we are past the 1 million mark so far and on track to deliver our 5 million women by the year 2020. And so looking forward to that.
And let me bring you in here because, of course, Dr. Richard did mention earlier, he was talking about, of course, the East African community, and he said there's a lot that's been done, but then again, it's not enough. And of course, the pace of implementing that is not as quick as we may want it to. But I want to get your perspective coming from entrepreneurship. What is it, proactive measures that women entrepreneurs can take then to overcome some of these obstacles that we're hearing right across from our panelists?
I think one of the things that we're really good at as women is building networks. And I think we underestimate the value of our own networks that we have. So one of the things that has been helpful to me certainly is reaching out to other women that are either in sectors that I was thinking of entering into and just getting their view in terms of how they've managed to navigate the landscape. I'm using those very same networks as we're venturing outside of Namibia and wanting to export outside of Namibia. So I think it's using that strength of what comes naturally to us. There are things that are being done from a policy point of view, but it's putting that into practice. So if I can just reflect in terms of what Lesotho is doing with regards to agriculture, it's great to put up these hubs, but you need to have policies that make sure that you protect the farmer, that the farmer does not forever remain the price taker. And that's what we find in agriculture, especially when it comes to just farming generally and not just specifically as a female in business. So if we're doing some of the things that we think would be helpful, let's talk to the sector and get to understand what are those challenges that we really need to address when we come up with policies, when we come up with initiatives that we think will move either females forward and ladies forward in business, or just generally the business environment and creating a business environment that is conducive to trade.
That's all we have time for this week. Do join the conversation online through Facebook, Twitter, and YouTube. Do join us again next week for another edition of Talk Africa. I'm Peninah Karibe. Goodbye.